Hola, buenos dias, mi amigos! Today I'm going to talk about stuff which in my opinion makes your lane splitting safer. But depending on where you live, you might want to adjust this information to your specific region. Because at some places lane splitting is legal and expected. In some places it's strictly prohibited, and sometimes it's legal but only between certain lanes at certain speed. For example, back in Russia, lane splitting is kinda like Schrödinger's cat. It's both legal and illegal at the same time. There is no particular law which forbids it, but at the same time, cops can say that you are not maintaining safe gap between vehicles. Here in Argentina, it's the very same situation. Lane splitting is not directly prohibited, but there is no particular rules about it either. So you can theoretically do it on any speed you want and between any lanes you want. So check your local laws and maybe even more importantly, look how people or other drivers and bikers react on lane splitters. Often there are quite strict set of rules about lane splitting, and often there are not. But of course, there are a lot of things which you can do in order to make your filtering or lane splitting safer. I picked 5. Let's talk about them. First, of course, is speed. I don't think that's much of a revelation. As you probably remember from our emergency braking exercises, our braking distance depends heavily on our speed. Roughly every added 12 miles per hour almost doubles our stopping distance. In a dense traffic, it's not uncommon for cars to change lanes. And if you are traveling too fast between two lanes, you have two major problems. First problem is that people highly unlikely will see you in their mirrors when they decide to change lanes. Second problem, as I already said, is that your stopping distance will be much longer. And since you are lane splitting, there is not much space for any maneuvers. So if somebody in front of you decides to change lanes, your only option will be braking. With all that being said, just don't hurry when lane splitting. Go at such speed that you know for sure that you can stop fast if something goes wrong. Plus, there is actually very little reason to hurry when lane splitting. Faster lane splitting really doesn't make a lot of difference. For example, in a very dense morning traffic in Moscow, I could save maybe 5 minutes tops for an hour-long trip when I was in a hurry, compared to my usual pace. You already save a lot of time when lane splitting. There is very little sense to go faster. I would say maybe 10 to 15 miles per hour higher than the traffic speed is usually more than enough. Second tip about lane splitting is don't let the gap between the cars dictate your speed. Here's what I mean. Sometimes there will be a big gap like this when a car from one side is missing. Some riders tend to immediately open throttle and zip through this gap very fast. That is not usually very wise, because cars tend to jump into these gaps as well. And in a lot of cases, drivers don't look in the mirrors in between the lanes. So don't hurry here as well, continue to maintain safe speed. Third tip, look further. Don't concentrate all your attention only on cars in front of you. Try to also look further, at least several cars ahead. Try to also look into the other lanes from time to time, and don't forget your mirrors too. From looking far ahead and in other lanes, you can predict what people will do. For example, if you see that car far ahead stopped, it's obvious that cars in front of you will soon stop too. And in mirrors, if you see a motorcycle that is going faster than you, when you can, let him pass and he will plow you the path between the cars. Fourth tip, be ready to brake. Cover both brakes, and if something goes wrong, don't hesitate, brake immediately. As they say, brake first, ask questions later. Being ready to brake also means that it's better to keep the bike upright most of the time. Don't lean it from side to side too much. Fifth tip is about filtering, when cars are completely stopped. When traffic stops, watch out for pedestrians which are walking through the traffic across the road. If you are going near a truck or a bus, be extremely careful and extra slow. You can't see a person behind it, and pedestrians often don't expect filtering bikers either. Also, when traffic stops completely, it's not too uncommon for passengers to open car doors or to stick arms through the windows, so definitely watch out for that too. And I think that's pretty much it. At least that's what I remember to say. If I forgot anything, you can write it in the comment section or in our new Riders Facebook group. Thank you for watching. Adios.